My next door neighbors are HOA board members, and I assume they don't appreciate my small garden of fruit trees, bushes, and greens in pots. They have talked to me about the garden before, but never anything negative about it. After months of gardening, I just got an email from the HOA saying that I need to move my garden because it is unsightly and a nuisance. I assume that this is because this is the closest bylaw they could find that would work to force me to move the plants. My cars in the driveway block the plants from street view 80% of the time, and I even work from home. I would deem unsightly needs to be seen. I wish my neighbors or anyone on the board would have just had a discussion with me about it, rather than try and misconstrue verbiage of our bylaws and claim the garden is a nuisance. They claim that potted plants are not a problem to have, only mine in particular. I would have been happy to comply originally, but now I am too angry to. So by their wording, I should be able to keep my potted plants where they are, as long as I make them somehow not unsightly, while they have not expanded upon what makes it unsightly. I assume because I'm growing food and not just flowers and decorative plants. My neighbors recently built a fence and attached it to my fence without my permission. I never said anything about it, but now I am eager to give them a written letter telling them they need to disconnect from my fence and build their own. My friends and family all have strongly advised not doing this, but I'm obviously more upset about it than they are. OP gives an update to unsightly being up to interpretation and potentially suing the HOA. That's reassuring to hear. The bylaw is clearly not written at all. Would I have to wait until they find me to take action? I've always heard from others, take that as it is, that the HOA is usually the winner. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I know I enjoy the garden, and my kids love being able to grab a strawberry when we're leaving the house. There are other properties in the approximately 100-house HOA that have tomatoes on their front door and pots leading down their entire driveway. HOA story time. Neighbor not in my CCRs says he's going to sue me to enforce the camping vehicle rule posted by HP Dork. So, long story short, I've lived in the house for 7 years. One neighbor comes up and hands me a letter to remove my motorhome from my driveway in 30 days based on the CCRs. Never even knew they existed, and neither did my other neighbor who's lived there for 15 years. Apparently, my house, along with the house north and south of me, form a subdivision with CCRs. I found the paperwork, and the original, hugely vague CCRs do mention no camping vehicles are allowed in the subdivision unless loading or unloading. I quote the word subdivision because our houses are literally side by side on a public country road. I did some digging and I found out the previous owner parked a camper and fifth wheel on the property for 10 years without anyone saying anything. So I told the other neighbor this, and he basically tucked tail and conceded. Turns out, my neighbor across the street, who isn't in the CCRs, is ticked about the motorhome and basically using my neighbor, who is in the CCRs, to get me to move it. So I went over, and dude was complete butt. We always talk to each other weekly when we see each other outside and everything. Now he's all, "You're not being neighborly," and all that. Then he says he's prepared to sue me. Like, okay, bud, you have no leg to stand on, but feel free to bring a frivolous lawsuit against me. I'm not going to push it in the heat of things, OP updates. The other neighbors just want to stay out of everything for now. I'll probably just push for a vote to just remove the CCRs altogether and be done with it all. This was about 10 years ago, 2010-ish. My family lived in a very nice gated community with an HOA. It was during the summer, and most weekends we would bring our boat to the house on Friday nights to take out on Saturdays, and then move it back to where we stored it Saturday night. The HOA had a rule where you aren't allowed to keep boats within view of the street. Our driveway ran up beside the house, and we'd intentionally position it to be as invisible as possible. For the one night it would be there. Basically, all that was visible was a small T-top over my dad's truck. Our HOA was actually pretty awesome, super laid back, and really only did anything when there was a complaint. It was a relatively small neighborhood, less than 50 houses, and the HOA was really good at throwing monthly parties where we'd shut down a cul-de-sac and everyone would bring food and music and we'd all have fun. This was kind of what an HOA is supposed to be in theory, a good thing. Well, Karen had made a complaint to the board about our boat and had provided time-stamped photos of multiple violations. Mind you, one night a week, but she claimed it was consistent. The president came by to tell us, and it wasn't there when he was. We told him our side of the story. Basically, it was only there for about 12 hours on the weekend, and he said that he nor anyone on the board had ever noticed it. But since they had a complaint, they had to request that we remove it. I completely doubt they'd actually fine or do anything past asking, but rules are rules. Cue my father's mastery of the art of malicious compliance. Well, an important bit of information about this piece of property: when the neighborhood was built, my dad bought the house as well as a property bordering the back of ours that was not a part of the HOA or in the neighborhood and originally had a small chain link fence between it and the house. It was accessible through a small street with a few homes on it bordering our neighborhood. Well, my dad's beautiful brain started thinking about, and for the cost and inconvenience of storing it at the storage place, he could probably just build a pad for it behind the house. He had a gravel pad put in the corner of the property with a shed over it, intentionally as close to the edge of the property so it would preserve the view out the back or be very visible from the front of the house, either one. There wasn't any real backlash about it. Apparently Karen brought it up again and the board politely informed her that they had no control over that property, and I think she admitted defeat. The board actually found it pretty funny and never had any other issues with them. Karen moved about a year later and my parents moved about 2 years ago. I love the neighborhood though, genuinely a positive HOA experience, just an annoying Karen to make life inconvenient. Grumbly Old Man says, "What's better than FU I'm building a shed money? FU I'm building a shed on wheels money." Can an HOA tow a illegally parked car? Posted by Lights Out. My HOA has a CC&R stating that we can't have a vehicle parked on the street. When we first moved in, I didn't think it was a big deal because, well, one, I had only 2 cars at the time, but since promoted and have a company truck now, so I leave my car on the street in front of my house. And 2, from then and even now, plenty of people park on the street anyway and have never been towed, at least from what I've seen, and I regularly jog and walk around this neighborhood. The issue here is I have the whiniest neighbors imaginable that ever since I got promoted and started parking my car on the street, they've consistently griped about how they can't back out of their driveway because of my parked car. I tried to be accommodating by ensuring that I park as close to the curb as I can, but I definitely don't want to leave my car parked in front of someone else's house. I also can't use my garage because I use it as a home gym. Woe is me, right? They've called parking police multiple times on me and told me I was fine as I was, and now has the HOA haggling me. The city owns the street, not the HOA, as I've called the municipality to verify this ownership. I really need to know my rights in case they don't chill out and try to tow my vehicle. Am I screwed because I signed their CC&R agreement, or am I okay since it's parked legally and the city owns the street? Commenter answers that if the street's not owned by the HOA, they have no jurisdiction over it, and OP says it's definitely not gated either. Hopefully that's even more of a leg to stand on. HOA harassment posted by Vote for Lobster. I live in a small neighborhood of 52 homes. The HOA board is required to have a minimum of 3 members, but they have high turnover, including our president who just resigned this week. Right now, they have 2. 5 minutes after they send the email saying, "Our president resigned and we need someone to come on as our secretary for 3 months, so we have 3 on the board till the annual meeting," I received a second email complaining about grass clippings that blew off of my lawn, with a very dramatic overreaction, and my driveway needed power washed. This is one of the many I received this year. Let me be clear, I take good care of my property and I take pride in it. My driveway is under a huge oak, so yes, it gets a little sappy throughout the year, so I power wash annually in the fall before the leaves fall, because the sap is terrible in the spring and early summer. Their description was, "It is almost black and dark gray all over," and instructed me to hire a contractor to power wash it. When they reference the subline of the bylaw they're utilizing, this is the line: prevent the existence of any other condition that reasonably tends to detract from or diminish the aesthetic appearance of the development. Wow, what an outrageous overgeneralization, Can they not utilize that for literally anything they want? It's literally 2 old retired people in our neighborhood, and I've already received upwards of 10 emails. Snow, mailbox paint, stroller left in the driveway by the car, and so on. In your experience, do HOAs usually win legal battles with overgeneralized bylaws? I'm tired of complying and want to push back. This commenter gives the answer, drops the hammer, and says, they're begging for members, joined the board with 2 other reasonable residents, and put a permanent stop to their bullcrap. Nice. We got into a dispute with the HOA and sort of won. Here's the chain of events posted by Awesome Dad for Henry. The HOA issued us a violation saying there was a weed that turned into a tree in our front yard. We asked what they were talking about, and they sent a picture of a tree in our backyard. We told them that that is not a weed, but a cherry tree. We acknowledged it looked overgrown and weedy around, so we asked if we could remove the weeds and trim. They agreed. And we did just that. We trimmed the tree quite a bit. It's on a hill and close to our neighbor's property above us. He arbitrarily cut our tree down a year ago, and we got into a small dispute. He didn't ask. That was the problem. I thought it was all cleared away, but I guess not. It sounds like he's been complaining to the HOA behind our backs. So we trimmed the tree and removed the weeds. The HOA issued us a new violation, saying that it is a weed tree and it must be removed. We fought back and we told them that this is ridiculous. It's not a weed tree. We trimmed it like asked. It is selective enforcement and blah blah blah. So they shot back and said we can keep our tree under 3 conditions. It must not exceed the property lines, it must not exceed the roof line, and it must be manicured professionally by a landscaper twice a year. Twice a year makes sense because this cherry tree grows fast. I don't understand the professional thing other than it sounds like the neighbor keeps complaining and probably making it out to be a hazard. So maybe they feel like if they make us do it professionally, the guy has nothing to stand on with that documentation? We had no clue this guy was complaining so much. If we can get someone to trim it for $200 every time, $400 a year, we will do it. But I think it's crazy that they are enforcing that. The HOA probably doesn't realize that certain trees need to be done certain ways in parts of the year. I hope they don't try to screw over OP that way. Old guy swipes my shopping cart with his Prius, expects to trade vehicle insurance, posted by Calidus. I'm still shaking my head over this. It happened several months ago. I was getting ready for a home project and had picked up some corrugated steel roofing, a load of lumber, and 4 bags of construction sand from the local big box home improvement store, the orange one. The lumber was over 12 feet long, and everything fit on one cart. My pickup truck was parked in the parking lot, and I planned to push the cart there to load it, just like hundreds of other customers do. There is a high awning at the store exit, and after that, there's the parking lot. There is no pedestrian painted crosswalk, but this is California. Parking lots are pedestrian right-of-way. Anyway, I check both ways before pushing this heavy, long, and unwieldy load into the parking lot. I let the Jeep coming from my right go by. The Prius on my left is a long way away, so off I go. I didn't realize how fast the Prius was going, almost 40 miles per hour. I had about 8 feet of lumber into the parking lot when he drove up on me. He swerved and missed, so he didn't hit me head on, but he did kiss the load of 4x8s with his right front quarter panel. The wood then laid a perfect crease all the way down the side of his shiny Prius, all the way back to his rear quarter panel. With 200 pounds of sand, another 200 to 300 pounds of wood, and maybe 100 pounds of steel, the cart didn't move. Heck, the wood wasn't even damaged. The driver stopped almost 30 feet away, put his car in park, and came to check damage. He was old. Look, I'll be 60 this year, but I guessed he was easily 20 years older. Skinny and looking like dried jerky, but spry enough and alert. We asked each other if we were okay, and he checked the damage on his car, and out of habit, I took photos of the damage, his license plate, my cart, and the area. Then he came up and asked to trade vehicle insurance. I laughed in his face. My truck gets parked way over there. Why would I give you insurance on it? He got upset and asked me how I was going to pay for his car. I pointed out that he technically hit a pedestrian in a pedestrian area, was going too fast, and saw me enter his path from 50 feet away. He had plenty of time to halt and let me cross. He was upset and then hit on the bright idea that maybe the store was at fault and liable for parking lot accidents, and he said he was going to talk to the manager. After he left, I decided I wanted to stick around and see what happened, but I needed my stuff loaded. So I left my cart parked out of the way and I brought my truck under the awning and started loading. The old guy and the manager came out, and once the manager understood what happened, she explained how the store was not liable. He talked about suing the store, and she shrugged and told him to, well, go ahead. The company lawyers would take care of it. But since he said lawsuit, she couldn't talk anymore, and she left. He came back over to me and asked, how was I going to make this right? I told him nicely that since I had no damage, I didn't need anything from him running into me. He said I ran into him. Really? Look at your front quarter panel. And that he was calling the cops. Okay, dude, you do that. I know something about the cops in this city. Unless there's a shootout, a lot of money, a lot of drugs, or a body, their response time can be measured in hours or never. So I went back and finished loading my truck, and then I got in and sat in the AC to cool off. Finally, I wrote my name on a paper and my telephone number. I gave it to the guy and told him to give it to the cops when they arrived. And then I left. About 5 hours later, a cop called and asked to trade information about the guy, basically driver's license info. They were still at the store. The guy sounded frustrated. So I read off the details of my license, and the cop read off the details of his license. No insurance info was traded. He just wanted to know who to sue. The cop emphasized the gentleman's birth date. That's when I learned he was 98 years old. Good on him for keeping his license. The cop also emphasized that this was a civil matter and the old guy could sue. I said that I understood and I looked forward to it. I've received no court summons, no other action, and my backyard goldfish pond is still in work. How old did you expect the guy to be? Because I wasn't ready for 98. What about you? Takeout fires back at Karen, posted by Carl. This one is hilarious. Karen leaves a review on a site, 2.25 stars, saying, the wrap was all soggy, so I couldn't eat it. Just ate the chicken and the burgers were missing food that was advertised. What? So then the restaurant comes back and says, hi Karen, had a look into your order. You ordered 2 burger meals and a wrap and chips, which were all packed and sent out to you. We can only deliver what you order. Maybe cut down on your drinking and then you won't forget what you ordered. The HOA finds me, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.